Welcome to Dreadtime Stories. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. Your choice to watch this channel means a lot to me. Tonight, I have a spine-chilling collection of scary stories set in the rain for you to enjoy. So, let's get comfortable and allow the darkness overtake us. I've always been a skeptic. Ghosts, spirits, paranormal activity, it was all nonsense to me. That is, until I moved into 42 Willow Street. It started small. A whisper here, a creak there. Nothing I couldn't explain away with old pipes and settling foundations. But as the days went by, the noises grew louder, more persistent. And then, they became word. At first, I thought I was going crazy. I'd be sitting in my living room watching TV when I'd hear it. Faint voice coming from inside the walls, saying things like, "Help us," or "Save them." I tried to ignore it, cranking up the volume on my shows, but the voices only got louder. One night, unable to sleep, I pressed my ear against the wall. What I heard chilled me to the bone. It wasn't just one voice, but many. Men, women, children, all whispering, pleading, screaming. Their words overlapped, creating a cacophony of desperation that made my head spin. I started researching the history of the house. Turns out, 42 Willow Street had a dark past. Back in the 1920s, it belonged to a man named Edward Blackwood. He was a respected member of the community, known for his charity work. But behind closed doors, he was a monster. The police found dozens of bodies buried in the walls and under the floorboards. Men, women, children, all victims of Blackwood's twisted games. He'd lure them in with promises of help, then torture and kill them, sealing their bodies and their spirits within the house. Armed with this knowledge, I tried to communicate with the spirits. I told them I knew what happened, that I wanted to help. That's when things got really bad. The whispers turned to screams. Objects started flying across the room. I'd wake up with scratches all over my body. It was like the house itself was trying to drive me out, or worse, make me its next victim. I tried to leave, but every time I approached the front door, an invisible force would throw me back. The windows wouldn't break, no matter what I threw at them. I was trapped, just like Blackwood's victim. It's been 3 days now. I haven't slept, haven't eaten. The voices are constant, a never-ending chorus of pain and anger. They're in my head now, not just the walls, telling me to join them, promising peace if I just let go. If you're hearing this, please, don't come looking for me. Stay away from 42 Willow Street. The walls are hungry, always hungry. I fear I'm about to become their next meal. Wait, what's that sound? Oh God, the walls. They're opening up. I can see hands reaching out, rotting flesh and bone. They're pulling me in. No, please, no. I can feel myself becoming part of the house, my voice joining the others, and now I understand. We need more, always more. So please, won't you come visit us at 42 Willow Street? We're dying to meet you. And I promise, you'll never want to leave. I used to love camping. The crisp air, the starry nights, the stories around the fire. But after what happened last summer, I can't even look at a tent without shaking. It was supposed to be a fun weekend trip. Just me and 4 of my closest friends heading up to Blackwood Forest for some hiking and marshmallow roasting. We found the perfect spot by a small lake, set up camp, and settled in for a night of ghost story. As darkness fell, we gathered around the campfire. Flames cast eerie shadows on the trees, and a chill wind rustled through the leaves. Perfect, scary story weather. We went around the circle, each trying to outdo the last with tales of axe-wielding maniacs and vengeful spirit. Then it was Jimmy's turn. He cleared his throat and leaned in close. "I've got a story," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But it's not made up. It's true, and it happened right here in these woods." We rolled our eyes, expecting another urban legend. But as Jimmy spoke, the air around us seemed to grow colder. He told us about a group of campers who disappeared in Blackwood Forest 50 years ago. Their bodies were never found, but hikers sometimes reported hearing children's laughter echoing through the trees at night. As Jimmy finished his story, a twig snapped in the darkness beyond our campfire. We all jumped, then laughed nervously. But the laughter died in our throats as we heard it. Faint sound of a child giggling. "Very funny, Jimmy," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, but Jimmy's face had gone pale. The giggling grew louder, joined by other voices. Children's voices singing a nursery rhyme I didn't recognize. They seemed to be coming from all around us. Suddenly the fire went out, plunging us into darkness. In the moonlight, I saw them, pale, translucent figures of children, emerging from the trees. Their eyes were hollow, their mouths stretched in unnatural grins. We ran, stumbling through the dark forest. The ghostly children followed, their laughter growing more frenzied. I could feel their cold breath on the back of my neck. I don't know how long we ran. At some point, I realized I was alone. I could still hear the others screaming in the distance, but their voices were getting fainter. As dawn broke, I stumbled onto a road and flagged down a passing car. The police searched the forest, but they never found my friend. They're still out there, somewhere in Blackwood West. Sometimes late at night, I think I can hear them, laughing, singing, begging me to come back and join their endless, ghostly campfire. I know it's only a matter of time before I do. Spirits of Blackwood Forest are patient. They can wait. So if you're ever camping and hear children laughing in the night, run. Run as fast and as far as you can. Because once they invite you to their campfire, you'll never leave. I used to love zoos, the exotic animals, the excitement of seeing creatures from far-off land. But now I can't even look at a cage without breaking into a cold sweat. It all started when I took a job as a night security guard at the old Blackwater Zoo. The place had been shut down for years, scheduled for demolition. My job was simple: keep out vandals and make sure none of the decaying structures collapsed before the wrecking crew arrived. The first few nights were uneventful. Just me, my flashlight, and the eerie silence of abandoned enclosures. But on the fourth night, everything changed. It started with sounds, roars, screeches, and howls echoing through the empty park. I told myself it was just the wind or maybe some stray cats, but deep down, I knew. Those were sounds no living animal could make. As I patrolled, I saw movement in the old habitat. Shadowy shapes prowling behind rusted bars. Glowing eyes watching me from overgrown foliage. And in the primate house, spectral hands reaching out, trying to grab me as I passed. I ran, heart pounding, only to find myself face to face with a ghostly lion. Its translucent form flickered in the moonlight, its roar a bone-chilling wail of agony. That's when I realized these weren't just animal ghosts, they were suffering. Images flashed through my mind. I saw the zoo's dark history, animals mistreated, experiments conducted in secret labs beneath the park. Pain, the fear, the rage, it was all there, etched into every spectral form. I tried to leave, but the gates were locked. No matter how hard I pulled, they wouldn't budge. I was trapped, surrounded by the tortured souls of countless creatures. They herded me towards the center of the park, to a decrepit building I'd never noticed before. The sign above the door read Human Exhibit. Inside I found cages, human-sized cages, and in each one, translucent figure. Men, women, children, all victims of the zoo's twisted experiment. Their eyes pleaded with me as their mouths opened in silent screams. A ghostly zookeeper appeared, grinning maliciously. "Welcome to the exhibit," he said. "We've been waiting for a new specimen." I fought, but how do you fight a ghost? They overwhelmed me, dragging me towards an empty cage. As they pushed me in, I felt my very essence being stripped away. I was becoming one of them, another tortured soul in this spectral zoo. Now I'm trapped. A living exhibit in a menagerie of the damned. I watch as night after night new security guards come. I try to warn them, but I can't make a sound. All I can do is watch as they too become part of this eternal nightmare. So if you're ever offered a job at an abandoned zoo, run far and fast. Because in this place, the real animals aren't the ones behind bars. And once you're part of the exhibit, there's no escape. Every night is feeding time in the spectral zoo. And trust me, you don't want to be on the menu. I never believed in ghosts. Not until I moved into my grandmother's old house. It was supposed to be a fresh start, a chance to focus on my writing. On the first night, something felt off. It started with a sound, faint, muffled cry that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. I brushed it off as the wind or my imagination running wild in this creaky old place. But the crying persisted, night after night. The sobs grew louder, more desperate. It was definitely a woman's voice, filled with such pain it made my chest ache. I'd wake up in cold sweats, her cries echoing in my ears. I tried to ignore it, but the house had other plans. Objects moved when I wasn't looking. Doors slammed shut on their own. Sometimes out of the corner of my eye, I'd catch a glimpse of something. Flash of white, a wisp of dark hair. Determined to find answers, I dug into the house's history. That's when I met Mr. Thompson, a local historian. His eyes lit up when I mentioned the crying woman. "Ah," he said, leaning in. "You've heard Eliza." He told me her story. She'd lived in the house a century ago, lost her only child to illness, and never recovered from the grief. "They say she still wanders the halls," he whispered, "looking for her baby." I couldn't sleep that night. Every creak, every shadow seemed to hide Eliza's presence. Then, as the clock struck midnight, I saw her. She stood at the foot of my bed, her face hidden behind dark hair. Her white dress was tattered, and she was weeping, those heart-wrenching sobs that had haunted my nights. I should have been terrified, but all I felt was overwhelming sadness. Before I could stop myself, I whispered, "I'm sorry about your baby." She lifted her head, and I saw her face for the first time. Her eyes were hollow, filled with endless grief. She reached out a pale hand, and suddenly I was somewhere else. I was in the woods behind the house, following Eliza as she carried a small bundle. She was crying, digging frantically in the soft earth. I watched helplessly as she buried her child in a shallow grave. When I returned to myself, I was alone in my room, but I knew what I had to do. The next day, I ventured into those woods. It took hours of searching, but I found it. A small, overgrown mound hidden beneath a gnarled tree. I cleared away the weeds and placed a bouquet of wildflowers on the grave. "I'm sorry," I said to the empty air. "I hope you can find peace now." That night, I heard the crying again, but this time it transformed into something else. A soft sigh, almost relieved. I opened my eyes to see Eliza by my window, smiling now, grief gone from her eyes. She nodded once, then faded away like mist in the morning sun. I never heard the crying again, but sometimes, when I'm writing late into the evening, I swear I can feel a presence, grateful and serene. I know Eliza is still here, watching over her home. Now, finally, she's at. I never thought my reflection would try to kill me. But here I am, barricaded in my bathroom, trying to stay alive. It started a week ago. I was getting ready for work, just like any other day. As I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my tie, I noticed something off. My reflection blinked, but I hadn't. I froze, staring at myself. For a split second, I swear I saw a smirk cross my reflection's face. I chalked it up to lack of sleep and went about my day. But things only got weirder. The next morning, my reflection waved at me. I nearly dropped my toothbrush in shock. When I waved back, it just stood there, grinning. By day 3, I was terrified to look at any reflective surface. My mirror self would make faces at me, silently laugh, or worse, stare at me with pure hatred in its eyes. I tried to tell my girlfriend, but she thought I was losing it. Maybe I was. I started covering all the mirrors in our apartment. She left that night, saying I needed help. On day 5, things escalated. I was in the kitchen, trying to avoid my warped reflection in the microwave door. Suddenly, a hand, my hand, but not my hand, shot out of the surface, grabbing my wrist. I yanked away, falling backward. When I looked up, the microwave door was closed, my reflection sneering at me from behind the glass. I smashed every mirror in the house after that. But it didn't matter. He found me in windows, in puddles, in the screen of my phone. Always watching, always grinning. Last night I woke up to find him standing over me. Not a reflection anymore, but a 3-dimensional copy of myself. His eyes were pitch black, his smile impossibly wide. He reached for me, his fingers elongating into razor-sharp claws. I managed to escape, locking myself in the bathroom. I can hear him out there now, scratching at the door. His voice, my voice but wrong, keeps whispering, "Let me in. I just want to wear your skin. We'll be together forever." I don't know how much longer this door will hold. I'm staring at the mirror now, the only one I didn't break. My reflection is gone, replaced by a swirling vortex of darkness. I think it's a way out, a way to escape him. But I don't know where it leads. The door is splintering. I'm out of option. If you're listening to this, please, whatever you do, don't trust your reflection. And if you see someone who looks exactly like me out there, run. I'm going through the mirror now. God help me. I never should have taken that job at Ravencrest Asylum. But when you're a broke med student with mountains of debt, you don't ask too many questions about a high-paying night shift gig. The place had been abandoned for decades, scheduled for demolition next month. My job was simple: patrol the grounds, make sure no teens were sneaking in for cheap thrills. Easy money, right? Wrong. From the moment I stepped inside, something felt off. The air was thick, oppressive, like the building itself was breathing. My flashlight beam cut through dust-filled corridors, revealing peeling wallpaper and rusted medical equipment. First night was quiet, too quiet. No creaks, no settling noises, just an eerie silence that made my skin crawl. But as I was leaving, I swear I heard someone whisper, "Help us." I chalked it up to an overactive imagination. But the second night, things got weird. My flashlight kept flickering, and I'd catch glimpses of movement in my peripheral vision. Shadows darting around corners, always just out of sight. Then the screaming started. Came from everywhere and nowhere, echoing through the halls. Agonized wails, pleading cries, maniacal laughter. I ran, heart pounding, but every corridor looked the same. I was lost in a maze of madness. Suddenly I found myself in what must have been the main treatment room. Rusty gurneys lined the walls, and ancient ECT machines loomed in the corners. And there, in the center of the room, was a figure. It looked like a doctor wearing an old-fashioned white coat. But as it turned, I saw its face was a twisted mass of scars and exposed bone. It grinned at me with too many teeth and said in a raspy voice, "Ah, a new patient. Let's begin your treatment, shall we?" I bolted, the thing's laughter chasing me down the halls. As I ran, the walls seemed to bleed, faces pushing through the plaster, hands reaching for me. Voices bombarded me from all sides. "Save us, join us." No escape. I quit that night. Told my supervisor I couldn't handle the job. He looked at me strangely and said, "You've been working here for months. Don't you remember?" That's when I noticed my reflection in his glasses. My face was gaunt, my eyes sunken. I looked like I'd aged years in just 2 nights. Now I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see that doctor's grinning face. I hear the screams, the pleas for help. And worst of all, I feel an urge to go back. like something in that asylum is calling to me. They're demolishing Ravencrest tomorrow, but I don't think that'll stop what's in there. Those echoes of the damned will find new walls to haunt, new victims to torment, and I fear I might be one of them. So if you're ever offered a too-good-to-be-true job at an abandoned building, run. Run far and fast. Because some places don't just house the insane, they create them. And once you've heard the echoes of the damned, you can never unhear them. I never thought I'd be afraid of the dark. Not since I was a kid. But now, as I sit here in my dimly lit apartment, every shadow makes me flinch. Because I know what's lurking in the darkness. Or rather, it started 3 weeks ago. I was walking home late from a friend's place when I saw him. A tall, impossibly thin figure, standing under a flickering streetlight. He wore an old-fashioned suit and a wide-brimmed hat that obscured his face. As I passed, he tipped his hat and said in a voice like grinding glass, "Evening, friend. Lovely night for a stroll, isn't it?" The next night, I saw him again. This time, he was across the street, staring directly at my bedroom window. I blinked and he vanished. It became a nightly occurrence. He'd appear in different places, outside my office, at the end of the grocery store aisle, reflected in my rearview mirror, always watching, always smiling that too wide grin. I tried to tell my friends, but they thought I was losing it. Maybe I was, but then people started disappearing. First it was the old man who lived next door, then the barista at my local coffee shop, a jogger who used the same route as me, all gone without a trace. That's when I noticed the smell. A sickly sweet odor that seemed to follow me everywhere, reminded me of overripe fruit and decay. Last night, I finally got a good look at his face. I wish I hadn't. His skin was pale and waxy, stretched too tight over sharp cheekbones. His eyes were black pits, and his mouth, God, his mouth. It opened far wider than any human mouth should, revealing row upon row of needle-sharp teeth. He spoke to me then, his voice echoing in my head. "You've seen me now," he said. "That means you're next. I'll be coming for you soon. Your fear is exquisite." I haven't slept since. I've barricaded myself in my apartment, but I know it won't help. The lights keep flickering, and that sweet, rotting smell is getting stronger. I can hear footsteps now, slow and deliberate, coming up the stairs. Floorboards in the hallway are creaking. There's a knock at the door. 3 slow taps. "I'm here," that gravelly voice calls out. It's time to join my collection. The doorknob is turning. I don't know how he got in. The shadows in the room are growing, stretching towards me like grasping hands. I can see his silhouette now, framed in the doorway. That impossibly wide grin gleaming in the darkness. "Don't be afraid," he says, reaching for me with long, spindly fingers. "Your fear may be delicious, but your soul will be divine. If you're hearing this, please be careful after dark. Don't trust the shadows. And if you see a tall man in an old-fashioned suit, run. Run as fast as you can, because the Midnight Collector is always hunting. And once he sets his sights on you, there's no escape." I never thought a simple yard sale purchase would turn my life into a living nightmare. But here I am, trapped in my own home, surrounded by dolls that want to steal my soul. It all started when I bought an antique dollhouse for my niece's birthday. It was a beautiful Victorian-style mansion, intricately detailed and surprisingly cheap. The old woman selling it seemed eager to get rid of it, muttering something about bad memories as she handed it over. The night I brought it home, I heard noises coming from my spare room where I'd stored the dollhouse. Tiny footsteps, whispered conversations, the sound of miniature doors opening and closing. When I checked, everything was still. But the dolls, they seemed to have moved. I told myself I was imagining things. But then I started noticing changes around my apartment. Objects out of place, doors I swore I'd closed left wide open. And always, always, feeling of being watched. One night, I woke to find a doll sitting on my chest, its porcelain face inches from mine. Its eyes were alive, glittering with malice. As I watched in horror, its tiny mouth opened, revealing needle-sharp teeth. It spoke in a high, childlike voice. "Play with us, mister. Play with us forever." I threw it across the room and ran. But they were everywhere. Dolls of all sizes, their painted faces twisted into cruel smiles. They chased me, their little hands grabbing at my ankles, their voices a chorus of giggles and threat. I managed to lock myself in the bathroom, but I can hear them out there, scratching at the door, calling my name, promising to make me one of them. I've tried to leave, but every time I open the front door, I find myself stepping back into my apartment. It's like the whole building has become a giant dollhouse, and I'm just another toy trapped inside. The dolls are getting bigger now, or maybe I'm getting smaller. It's hard to tell anymore. My skin feels stiff, my joints ache like they're made of wood and wire. I can see my reflection in the mirror. My eyes are becoming glassy, my face smooth and expressionless. I'm turning into one of them. The bathroom door is starting to splinter. I can see their tiny hands reaching through the cracks. Their voices are louder now, more insistent. Join us. Be our friend. Play with us forever and ever. I don't have much time left. If you're hearing this, please, whatever you do, don't buy secondhand dollhouses. Don't invite these cursed toys into your home, because once they're in, they never let you go. The door is giving way. I can see them pouring in, a tide of porcelain and plastic, their painted smiles promising an eternity of torment. I think I'm going to play with them now. I don't have a choice anymore. Maybe being a doll won't be so bad. Maybe, oh God, their hands are on me. They're pulling me down. I can feel my humanity slipping away with every touch. This is it. This is the end. I've always loved Halloween. Costumes, candy, the spooky atmosphere. But last year changed everything. Now, I dread October 31st. It all started when my friends and I rented an old farmhouse on the outskirts of town for a Halloween party. The place was perfect. Leaky floorboards, dusty windows, and a pumpkin patch out back. Classic horror movie stuff. We arrived early to set up. As the sun set, a strange fog rolled in, thick and almost glowing. I joked it was like something out of The Fog. If only I'd known how right I was. The party was in full swing by midnight. Music blasting, drinks flowing, everyone in costume. I was dressed as a cheesy vampire. That's when I noticed the moon, huge and orange-red, hanging low in the sky. Felt alive, pulsing. Suddenly, the music cut out and the lights flickered. In the silence, we heard it, a low, mournful howl that seemed to come from everywhere. Probably just local kids playing pranks, I said, trying to laugh it off. But a chill ran down my spine. We grabbed flashlights and headed outside to check the breaker. That's when we saw it. Figure at the edge of the pumpkin patch. Tall and unnaturally thin, wearing an old-fashioned suit. Its face was like a jack-o'-lantern, hollow eyes glowing with an eerie orange light, jagged mouth carved into a grin. We froze. The thing tilted its head, studying us, then raised a gnarled hand and beckoned. That broke the spell. We ran back to the house, but the doors wouldn't open. The windows were sealed shut. We were trapped. Outside, more figures appeared, dozens of them, all with those terrible pumpkin faces. They surrounded the house, casting long shadows. We huddled in the living room, terrified. Hours passed. Pumpkin-headed things just stood there, watching. As dawn approached, I noticed something horrifying. My friend Mike's face was changing. His eyes sunk in, his mouth stretched into a grin. An orange glow began to emanate from within him. One by one, my friends transformed. Their screams still haunt me. I watched helplessly as they joined the silent crowd outside. Just as the sun rose, the figures melted away, and my friends vanished. Fog lifted, the house unlocked itself, and I was alone. Police didn't believe me. My friends were listed as missing. The farmhouse owners swore they'd never rented it out for Halloween. Now it's Halloween again. There's a harvest moon fork. I can see that familiar fog creeping across my lawn. They're coming for me. The pumpkin-headed thing. This time, I don't think I'll escape. So if you're out tonight enjoying the festivities, be careful. And whatever you do, don't look at the moon. When it glows that sickly orange, they'll come. Trust me, you don't want to be there when they do. I've always loved the sea, the endless horizon, the salty breeze, promise of adventure. But now, as I stand on this ghostly deck, I realize the ocean holds horrors beyond imagination. It was supposed to be a simple job. Captain a luxury yacht for a wealthy couple's anniversary cruise. 2 weeks sailing the Caribbean, then back to port. Easy money. The first few days were perfect. Clear skies, calm seas, happy clients. But on the fourth night, everything changed. Fog rolled in, thicker than any I'd ever seen. It swallowed the yacht, blinding us. The instruments went haywire, spinning wildly. And then, emerging from the mist, I saw it. A ship, an old galleon, its sails tattered, its wood rotting. It should have been impossible. Those ships hadn't sailed for centuries. But there it was, bearing down on us. I tried to steer away, but our engines died. We were adrift, helpless as the phantom ship drew closer. I heard screams from below deck, my passengers. When I ran to check on them, they were gone. Vanished, leaving behind only a faint sulfuric smell. The galleon pulled alongside us. Its deck was crowded with figures, sailors, but not like any I'd ever seen. Their skin was pale and waterlogged, their eyes glowing with an unearthly light. They moved with jerky, unnatural motions, like puppets on strings. Their captain approached the railing. His face was a horror, half decayed, with sea creatures crawling in and out of his empty eye socket. When he spoke, his voice was like the grinding of a rusty anchor chain. "Welcome, fellow damned," he rasped. "You're part of the crew now." Before I could react, rotting hands grabbed me, pulling me onto the galleon. As my feet touched its deck, I felt a change come over me. My skin grew cold and clammy, my lungs filled with seawater. I was drowning, but I couldn't die. The captain grinned, revealing rows of shark-like teeth. "We're cursed to sail for eternity," he said, "gathering souls for our dark master below. You'll help us, won't you?" I tried to refuse, but my body moved against my will. I found myself at the wheel, guiding this damned ship through endless fog. Days, weeks, maybe years passed. Time has no meaning here. We've lured countless ships to their doom. I've watched in horror as we've dragged innocent sailors into our cursed crew. Their screams of terror turning to wails of despair as they realize their fate. I'm trapped in an endless nightmare, a voyage of the damned, sailing cursed waters, harvesting souls, some eldritch horror lurking in the depth. Don't let curiosity get the better of you, because our ship is always hunting, always looking for new crew members. And once you're aboard, there's no escape. Just an eternity of sailing cursed seas, your humanity slipping away with each soul you help condemn. Fog is rolling in again. I can feel the hunger rising in what's left of my soul. God help me. Think I see a ship on the horizon.